I've already done some of my work for this. It's a static site, so I actually already did this. Yes, that's right. I did this yesterday because I knew that's what I thought I was going to do today. So I listen currently on loafing.hardison.net. I'm looking for dylan.hardison.net as the host name. When I find that for the root location, I tell it to go to root serve http dylan to use an index.html file, and also to auto index, which means that if there isn't an index.html file, it will show you directory list. This is exactly what Apache does by default, so if you're using Apache, no worries. I also specify some error pages, which aren't important. So right now, what do we have? What do we have right now? Here, I say listen. What is there anything different? It doesn't say 80. 80 is implied, so that's not a problem. But there's no SSL. So what happens if I want to go there? I don't even remember if I put anything there. I was working on a resume, but it's empty. Nothing happens. So when it goes to the default one,
Is that supposed to be HTTPS?
it was HTTPS, right? Yep. So there's nothing there, but which HTTPS is it showing? That's actually a little confusing. So when we went back up to the top, the first one I specified for HTTPS, which is this one, I don't remember where it's redirecting to. Oh yeah, serve HTTP. So I can go to all right, so it's not going to the Dylan one right now. But what happens if I remove the S? So I've configured that one.
Open.
That was slightly unexpected. We're going to use the shotgun approach because I don't want to mess with ACLs right now. There's nothing wrong with ACLs. It would be hard to explain what I'm just doing to you.
Those are ACLs?
So yeah, that was like what was on it? What? Yeah, those are, see the ACLs up there? Yep. And Sam's right able to. So I'm going to move the stuff that's in there. Alright, so that's out of the way. Directory listing, yay! But I want HTTPS, so, because that was what the dog and pony show was about your HTTPS enabled static site. So if I was doing this all by hand, so you know everything that's going on, I keep editing this, it's not root. It's kind of annoying, isn't it? I really should use ACL so my users are allowed to edit this file. That would actually be fine and safe, right? So we're listening on, I'm going to do this explicitly. We're going to do everything in here explicitly. So we're listening on that IP address on port 443. Our server name is my name. In fact, I can just copy the rest because that's explicit. Just wanted to be explicit so there's not fancy names. There's more names involved, more confusing it gets. Does everyone understand what the location stanza does?
Sets the root of your web host?
Yeah. So what it does, location, is to respond to slash. So it doesn't see here. When it sees this, that means respond to slash. So it knows where to go when a request for slash comes in. And anything that's under that, like old, will go to there. So slash and anything underneath it. It's sort of like mounting a drive to a particular location, or mounting a path to a particular
So
location.
even the domain without this physical slash at the end would resolved correctly, correct?
Yes, I mean if it wasn't specifying the server name. So there's like two parts now that get to do match. First it matches on the server name, and when it matches on the server name it means that everything, hold on, it means that all that matches, and then it matches on the slash, which means that, whoops, which means that all of that matches. And what happens when it matches? It goes to this path, which is serve HTTP Dylan. Now, in other operating systems, sometimes the path will be something like var www HTML. Serve is like a newer standard for where it could be. It doesn't really matter. You could put it in your home directory for all of it and cares as long as the permissions are right. So now this is the same as the top one. We want to turn on SSL, so we need those 3 lines. SSL on. Let's see if I can remember how to spell them by like memory. That looks right, right? So now, save and quit. Nginx has a switch, which I always forget what letter it is. T. So if you run Nginx with T, it'll read its config file.
Test?
Yes, and tell you if it's good. Oh, got a warning. Oh, just the duplication of a content type association. Not a problem. Everything else about it's fine. So, restart Nginx. Changes to an HTTPS URL. And the same stuff. Yay, it works. And, sees a directory listing.
And what's the pretty little lock say?
And the pretty little lock is the same certificate everything has been getting. So, and I could do, now, I don't think I have something that doesn't end in hardison.net pointed to, actually I think hold on.
So what happens if you upload a certificate for a different domain?
I can't show it up, so if I upload a certificate for a different domain.
Is this what happens?
This is what happens. So
Okay.
this signdev.org does point to the hardison.net server that we were just looking at. And I kept HTTPS online, so it's actually telling me it's bad. And we can click on it and we can see why it's bad. And it's because it's the same certificate. And the certificate says in there its common name that it's good for hardison.net. And it's not, that doesn't seem mean it's good for signdev.org. And there's no way, short of having a separate IP address, of fixing this.
You can't put 2 domains in the same certificate?
Nope. Oh, actually you can. You can have subject alternative names, and about 90% of web browsers will support that. So when you go to startssl.com and you're registering and you pay them $50, you can jam about, what is it? It's like 15? There's a limit. You can jam a bunch of domains.
Into the certificate?
Yeah. So if I go to Certificate Wizard and say I want to do, this is how I would actually do it.
But that requires personal identification, verification, not just domain verification.
Yeah, you would have to go and validate both of the domains you want, and it would be tricky.
Tricky.
You can do it. I think that the one I'm using for... No. So I actually did, they rejected it. I created, we run an IRC network, and I run it under a couple of different domain names, and I created one with a bunch of subject alternative names, like 3 or 4 different domains involved in it, and they actually rejected it. They said I could resubmit it, and they'd issue it to me after I talked to them on the phone, and they made sure that my account hadn't been compromised and I was trying to do weird things. They actually called me. But this wasn't worth it. But you can, so if you were hosting a bunch of things on one IP address and you wanted to do a bunch, it would be annoying because every time you add or remove a thing, you'd have to go and pay, or not pay necessarily to start SSL, but you'd have to go and create a new certificate. You'd have to invalidate the old certificate by publishing it in a CRL. I mean, that would be the recommended thing to do, I think. You'd have to revoke it. So in general, you want for every secure site you run, you want a separate IP address. If you do have a bunch of related names and they're not going to change, like your company name, you work for Megafast Big Corp, and you manage to have MFB be your short domain name, and you want people to be able to go to both of them. I'm not going to type that into the browser because I have no idea if it's actually a registered domain or not, and that would be bad.
MyHouse.com.
Yeah, right now.
So.
That's not the point.
Anyway, yeah, so that would be one way where you'd have multiple domain names that are completely different that you want to have in the same SSL cert. But in a hosting environment with like name-based virtual hosting is typically used for, you just can't do SSL. I think this is fixes to this in future versions of the HTTP standard.
Well, if I recall correctly, the main reason why you can't have multiple virtual machines set up on the same system, the same
You mean
IP,
virtual hosts?
Yeah, virtual host, is because the domain name itself that's sent in the packet is encrypted.
Yep,
with the
that's why.
SSL certificate, so it has to decrypt it. with the
You know,
right
you can
certificate
do
for
it with
to
other
return.
protocols that use SSL. This is leading a little bit more technical than this was, but
You're on a server just trying to enforce all the certificates it has. Trying to guess.
no, it's not the server. The server's already going to send its certificate to the client. It has to, when the client connects, it's going to have to pick a certificate to send. However, the IMAP protocol, there's two versions of many of the other protocols that have been SSL-ified have two versions when it's been possible. So there's the one that is just, the whole connection is wrapped in SSL. The other way of doing it is to start the connection in plain text, negotiate the use of SSL, and then start doing SSL. This
A
is
longer
usually-
handshake.
Yeah, this is usually called the start, and I'm using this is why the start SSL is called this, is you send the command like an IMAP at start SSL, and then everything after the new line after that has to be encrypted. But before that, you could have negotiated which keys, which certificate you're using. The server would get to know who's connecting to it. Ultimately, this problem is all useless because you can just have IPv6 addresses anyway, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but how long is it going to take for IPv6 to get completely adopted?
Well, the thing is now if you're using, well, yeah, you got to worry about people being able to connect to you. But if you're using Linode or any number of other nice hosting providers now, they give you IPv6. And they'll even give you like a /56 if you want.
Yeah, but Brighthouse still doesn't.
Yeah.
So.
For a single server.
Yeah, I have a /56 now, which means I have 256 /64s. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So, if you wanted to set up Nginx, what would actually be required to do it? You would need to, and this is where all sorts of talks like this always end up going haywire. You would install the package. If you're using, I can actually just assume Ubuntu. I'm not using Ubuntu, but I can assume you're using Ubuntu. You just install the Nginx package. And the default config file will look mostly like what mine had without any server blocks or with a single server block. And the only configuration is you need to do what I just showed you.
So is Nginx very popular?
Nginx is very popular. I believe that I don't know the stats, and I don't feel like answering something I could just easily Google, but it's a good percentage of the internet's now using Nginx.
So they took a large chunk of the realty away from Apache.
Yep, and them and Lighty. Lighty I don't recommend because it's got some memory leaks and
Light HTTPD?
yeah, it's called Lighty for short.
Actually, what some servers tend to do is put Nginx on the front end. So
Yeah.
static files.
Yeah.
And any kind of dynamic file requires like PHP and stuff before through Nginx to Apache or whatever.
Yeah, Nginx is great for doing non-standard things as well.
So another thing that's cool with Nginx is, like he's saying, with proxying. So in Nginx, you can define something called an upstream, which I'm doing here. So this upstream is a named server, and I could easily have multiple servers. So if I'm running multiple instances and I want them to be kind of load balanced, I can just add them. in here, and every time that it's handled by this proxy pass directive, it would pick a different one. And that's, so you can use Nginx as a front-end load balancer.
So HTTP Jenkins is just kind of like a shortcut nomenclature to the larger block upstairs?
Yep, to the upstream.
Okay.
I think that's how that works. I haven't had to use it in production. Like, I don't have any load balancing or anything set up, but that's in theory how you do it. I just did it here because it looked better than having the hard-coded IP here.
I'm going to assume that it's not really too much of a load balancer, just a connection balancer.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it will round robin between it, and there is a module to handle more intelligent load balancing, like so you can have multiple upstreams listed, and it can have a ping to one of the backends, and I forget how this works. It's some kind of high availability.
LVS.
What?
You can always go LVS.
What's that?
Linux virtual server. It's in the kernel.
No one should use that.
That's great. It explains AppNextX.
Yeah. So
when did you start using Nginx?
I started using Nginx about 3 years ago. Before that, I was using Lighty. I originally did this because my Linode now, my Linode's huge. It's amazing. It's got like 1.5 gigs of RAM. But when I started out, Linode had 256 megs of RAM. And Apache wanted to use all of that. So I just said, no, Apache, it's been fun, goodbye. One thing that's bad about Nginx is it doesn't support CGI. So another,
Yes, it does. You can recompile it.
there's an better, anyway, so if you notice the slug site uses CGI, so we actually do,
We do?
yeah. I don't know if anyone's noticed that. The slug site, not the slug site, but slug in general, uses Mailman. Oh, you don't see, it doesn't say the .cgi anymore, I removed that. But anyway, this is a CGI script, and Nginx doesn't support that, so we're actually running a process called Dylan knows how to type grep. No, that's not what it's called. Oh, that's the loafing. I'm on the wrong box. Yeah, we use FCGI wrap, and FCGI wrap, it's configured somewhere.
That of course stands for fast CGI, right?
Yeah, so it wraps the CGI process in fast CGI, and then we forward that to it. Do you actually know people that recompile Nginx for CGI support? Because that's really weird.
I did it for fun.
Oh. And here I've actually broken the slug config out of the main config file into a sites directory, which is what I should have done on the other one, but this because technically multiple people could be using the slug server and too many cooks and all that. So a fast CGI thingy is just a socket. In this case, it's just a Unix domain socket, and then passing the connections onto that. But it's still executing each of these files in the user lib mailman CGI bin every single request. So like if I look at any given day the load on the slug site, it's coming from spawning these Python-based CGI processes. I really actually should see if there's a hardware, or if there's a better way of running mailman. Is someone knocking on the door?
No.
Not yet.
What?
Not yet.
Something. So, is anyone interested in knowing a brief lookup of the directives for using Apache with SSL? I don't.
It's not too difficult, but it is complex.
It is a little bit. You have a few more directions to. It's like SSL, and let's see if I can remember. SSL engine, camel cased, I think, or is the case matter in Apache? SSL engine on, and then SSL key, and then SSL certificate, or cert. Let's see how close it is to reality. Mod SSL. And this answers a lot of questions about what SSL is, which is useful. I can't find, in this whole thing, I don't see where it actually shows you the configuration parameters. I guess it's because it's the FAQ.
Once you install Apache, you find the free file, which works.
Because I don't want to install Apache.
You should install Apache.
I'm trying to think if I have any.
Apache is the alpha.
Go to configuration, turn SSL on.
Just this.
There we go. SSL engine on ... That's great. So then what else do you have to do?
You probably have to specify where your certificates are.
Certificate, SSL certificate key file. So in that case, that would have been, that's the same as the SSL certificate key in non-camel
Not
keys.
real hard because all that stuff's typically in the config file, commented out. And just
It is in,
go
it
down
is,
the list and go, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
it is in, I should point out it is in Nginx as well. In fact, I have on my laptop probably Nginx installed with, no I don't. I'm willing to install Nginx on my laptop, not
You should
Apache.
install Apache as well.
I think they conflict with each other, because they both want to have a socket ownership.
Oh, you don't have to
You
start
can run them both at the
with
same time, they just can't be listening to the same place at the same time.
Yeah, but I think,
port 80. Come on, I like port 80.
I think they have conflicts with systemd socket activation or something, I don't know.
Well, let's find out. Let's experiment.
I'm not sure if it's library slow or if my, no, that was pretty fast.
It's all leather.
So here is, by the way, how I knew how to configure SSL. This is the default config file that comes with Nginx, and as you can see, it just has everything right here. Listens on port 443, server name, localhost, SSL, SSL, SSL. You can set some other options here, which I removed from my example, but I probably should be setting this. This sounds important. SSL prefers server ciphers, which means I won't use weak ciphers just because the client wants them.